Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jackson Fisk with Goal Zero, and we are the simple way to manage safety. We offer turnkey compliance and remote management for all your safety needs. Welcome to Zero Hour. Zero Hour is an interview format live broadcast where we talk to business owners and non-for-profits, all in the effort to share their stories, successes, and challenges with you. Today's guest is Scott Jerace. Scott is the owner of Air Quality Solutions Edmonton, SOS Marketing Solutions, and a property investor. Scott's background is in training safety, consulting, and project management. He has over 20 years of experience in both the public and private sectors. Currently, his main focuses are environmental testing, marketing education for small business, and investing in international real estate markets. When he's not spending his time traveling, spending time with his family, and strangely obsessing over hockey stats in his spare time. So with that, let's get to it. Scott, how's it going, buddy?
How you doing, man? This is so awesome. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for joining me for episode 9 of Zero Hour. I think my transitions are starting to get a little smoother, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Practice makes perfect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for joining me. As from your intro, you have multiple businesses that you're working on, right? So main ones being air quality testing, marketing, and real estate investment.
Yeah.
So you're all over the map.
Yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg too. I have a couple of e-commerce sites as well, and I just you don't want to get too congested with throwing everything you do at people, because then it just they're like, how do you possibly do all that? And yeah, calendar management is a big religious practice in my house. So we wouldn't survive without it. So it's a good tip for anybody that wants to be able to do multiple things. You need to schedule stuff and like stick to your calendar. And if you don't, then it just isn't going to work. Right. So yeah.
If things aren't in my calendar just on a regular day, I forget all about it.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to have rules too. And my coach, great guy, he's basically laid out these rules, and I got to abide by them, right? So you can't cancel more than 2 days, and you can't move anything more than twice. And you realize this is a catch-22 after a while, because you don't have a room in your calendar to move anything 2 days anyways. So you get,
if you do it's just going into your time, then you've scheduled your time for yourself. So
you're really robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point, and you go, no, I should just take care of this now, because it's that actually will be the efficient thing to do. So yeah, big factor in life for me. And yeah, it has to happen like that, or else you don't get to do the stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So we touched on just like the 3, that we talked about.
Yeah.
In a quick rundown, what else do you got in that funnel?
I also support my girlfriend's business, Danielle's SOS Bookkeeping. I do operational management there, so I take care of all the things that have nothing to do with accounting. So like IT solutions and like arranging different contractors and stuff like that. And, making sure small stuff is done, like pointing out that we got to order toilet paper and things. I leave the accounting for them. I try to pick up the loose ends where I can. So it's your team's only as good as your weakest link, right? So mentioned, we do a couple of e-commerce sites for a while. I do a lot of SEO stuff with marketing, so that's kind of how that came to be. Essentially, your websites can't score well if you don't have the right formula in Google for the websites. And when you go out and invest a bunch of money into some products that you essentially are really ignorant and you don't know anything about the internet, you have realized you've dumped 10, 20 grand on something and no one's going to buy it because they can't essentially find your website.
Fair enough. I know I have like numerous softwares that I've paid for back in the day, and they're probably still getting paid for, and I don't even realize that they're there.
It's hard, right? And that's kind of how the idea of small business marketing came to be, because after I'd gone through this gauntlet and mentioning that, I signed up for stuff like that too. I had paid a lot of money to people and they didn't really do much. I had tried things overseas and that had failed. I'd talked to people that were gurus and experts. And it's funny because after you spend some time educating yourself and learning for yourself and doing some of the stuff for yourself, because you can't hire or find anybody who is even reasonably priced, to be honest, because a lot of the people that are professionals start at like $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
You know, and when you have a little e-commerce business with Shopify, that's more than you even invested in your entire website and your, you know, everything you could be selling for some people. So, you know, it's difficult, and I see why people could get frustrated with it. And, you know, focusing on this with small businesses is really important because people need to understand that this is kind of a new plateau. And it's not even that new anymore. I'm just getting kind of old, right? Like, you know, 20 years ago, people were getting interested in website, you know, sales and website advertising, or, you know, web-based advertising and things like that. And they really, you know, have refined it and developed it. And now I feel for people, sometimes I think it must be difficult to see this train and then try to run and catch up to the train as it's like flying by you, because this thing has been building up momentum for so long. And then today, you know, you're an electrician or you're a plumber or you're, you know, an accountant, and you want to go out there and start advertising in a market. Well, so much market establishment has been made in the internet already with certain businesses. It's very hard for some people to break out because of the type of industry you have, or whatever it may be. You know, you could have a large competitor in that area and they're going to blanket you with SEO. Like, there's almost no chance unless you're unless you're re-keywording your page every day and doing other things. Like, it's hard to manage that and stay on top of that when you have so many other factors in your business to worry about. And really, how many people get into business to become their own SEO person for their website, right? So it becomes very frustrating at that point, because I wanted to be doing what I love, but now I'm actually doing all the things that I'm not so passionate about to pay people to do what I love.
Yeah. Well, there's a roundabout story on how you actually fall into things, right?
Yeah.
So we can talk about that too. Like, we have, you know, your journey to 1 million businesses. Like mine, when I look at, you know, how this business happened, and, you know, even this show, it wasn't just like that. I know I'm going to do this. There was like a path that I took that, you know, an action happened that, you know, made me veer off to do something else. Right. Like, when I looked at my first job, I was like, I'm going to be a career like military, right? Because I'm like, that makes sense to me. Go do this, achieve this, you become this. And that was kind of what I had in my mind. Well, that doesn't really happen, right? What this thing that we build up in our mind in this journey, you go, oh, I just made that up, right? It works for some, it doesn't for others. Things happen in life. So then I went, okay, now I'm going to do these other things. So I'm going to go to school to fire and medic. Then I couldn't get a job. So then I got into a trade, right? And you're like, hey, I like this. And then it just this weird progression until I got into occupational health and safety. And you go, oh, I didn't think I would ever be here in my life. Right. So I like it. I love where I am. I love what I'm doing, but I never thought I would be there. Yeah.
So I had this strange recollection last week, you know, when you've done something for a real long time, but you haven't really wrapped your head around it completely. I got asked to speak at the Syndicate Real Estate Conference, I don't know, a week or two ago, something like that. And I got asked to talk about my journey. And so many times when I'm asked to speak to people, it's usually about like numbers and analytics and, you know, why this process works. This is the formula you should use and it's proven. And I like that stuff. I know it's not exciting for most people, but, you know, for me, it's cool. But this was about my journey through real estate investment. And I thought about it, and it was strange. I started it when I was 17 and kind of got to the point I am at now. And I had a goal that I had in mind, but I passed that goal a while ago, but I didn't realize that I'd passed it because you run your annual numbers and stuff like annually, and then you realize kind of where you're sitting. And I was just kind of blown away by like, you know, the accumulation of assets that I've acquired. And I never really stopped to think about that. And it's kind of interesting to say, because again, I was talking to Mitch, our coach, and he was like, I was like, there's no one there that has a parade for you when you sign that deal that you've been working on for like a year and a half.
No.
And though you may have, made, $500,000 in that one deal, that parade doesn't happen. And it's kind of like you never get this sense of like, there's no praise or anything that you ever get. So it never became that big of a deal because there's no acknowledgement of it, right? And then after you're looking at numbers, you're like, oh my God, like that actually did happen. Oh man, like wow. And yeah, just that was weird because it took me like 20 years to kind of get somewhere, and then you find out it happened and you're like, okay, like that's cool. And in the last week I've really remotivated myself to look at some other opportunities that maybe I would become shy upon, because like the last real estate deal I did, it took like 2 years to close. It was a commercial building and just really good price, really good margin, and it just was a snail pace, and every speed bump we hit. And now that it's closed, I'm now looking at some other stuff. So I'm very stoked about that.
It's funny that you say that too, because it doesn't matter what we do in our successes in life.
Yeah.
You can write a book about it and you can be like, everyone's just be like, oh, look how easy it was.
Yeah.
But they're not going to see, every speed bump, every pivot, every misdirection that you've had to do to still get to that. They just see this outcome and go, well, I can do that.
Well, it's strange too, because like I remember the day I went to the seminar, like everything about the day. I even got conned into buying somebody's, formula for acquiring houses for $1. And it's like 1998, man. Or like I paid $900 for this thing, and it was like audiobooks on tape. And
a what?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And now I look at it, I'm like, that could have been one of the worst purchases I ever made. Like, it's so obsolete. And, like $900, 20 years ago was, more than $900 now. And I was like 17. And I went there and I got talked into something because somebody basically said one line, what if I told you there's more millionaires on the planet created by real estate than anything else?
Be like, that's awesome.
That is awesome. And now that we're living there, I've come to realize the true thing in life is more money, more problems, right? So, and that's, there's more dreams and more stuff to do. Just because this is done, let's find the next one and open another door and see where that goes, right? So,
okay. Well, okay. So there's probably more story we can dig into the real estate investment aspect. Let's talk about the air quality control and the air quality testing solution.
Yeah.
How did you get there? What was your background and how did you get into that?
Well, essentially my journey's kind of funny. When I was working in Fort McMurray in a management role, the facility that I worked at, basically we had to do safety courses as well to be able to correspond with people. And I did that. They paid for my education, which I'm really, really grateful for. It was great experience, and it led me into another career path, really similar to yours actually. So I did that, and then after I'd taken a role with the city as a safety training manager, so splitting roles. Most of the time it was safety training. People are on vacation and stuff. I'm subbing over there as the OHS coordinator over there, and seen a lot of air quality testing happening in the area I was working in. Relatively, important thing. Of course, we monitor for mold and asbestos typically. There are some other things, but those two are the primarily big things we're usually looking for here. And I have a friend. He owns a business too. Craig from A&M Abatement, and I'll give him a shout out.
Shout out to Craig.
Shout out to Craig. And he asked me one day, if I was interested in doing some testing for him because I was doing it already for the city, with the city. So, when that happened, I was like, this is a good opportunity to try some more entrepreneurialism. Different columns of entrepreneurialism are functional in different places in life. Like, I was always able to do property when I was working for somebody.
Okay.
And that was, you can do that. Like, you can look at your spreadsheets after work or whatever, but doing something like this it's too much time, just too time consuming to be able to do it with a job. Right. So I was like, I'm going to take a risk and do this. You know, I've worked hard in other areas and I have enough backing for myself to take this risk. And, you know, working for yourself seems very gratifying and freeing. And, you know, there's
Some
more to
days.
this. Yeah, there's more to the story
Yeah.
later because you
Yeah.
gotta, you know,
Yeah.
you gotta deal with things and stuff. So, you know, there is responsibility involved in this, right? So,
Yep.
but at least it's on your own terms for the most part. If I don't want to deal with somebody, then you just frankly don't have to, right? And I think that's the thing that you always have in the back of your mind where you're like, yes, I want your business. I will do, you know, a lot of things to make you happy, but at the end of the day, I have a line and I won't cross that, right? So that's there. So yeah, I started doing that on my own, and over the last like 4 years, it's been very good for me. I have time in my life actually to do more. It's not as time consuming as like a managerial role for a company, you know, any of the companies that I used to work for. I have time to spend with my kids and I have time to, you know, do other things. Like I said, my wife also runs a very successful business herself. So during tax season, because she's an accountant, her time is very, you know, it's gone. I haven't actually seen her in like 3 months, right? We talk to each other at like 10 o'clock at night and, you know,
pass notes while one's going to bed.
Yeah, 7:30 in the morning, we're having coffee with each other. And then, you know, she's back off. So for our family, it's really good where I you know, I'll leave in the morning and I'll typically take care of, you know, a couple tests, and grandma's house is really close. So when we need to utilize that, that works. And COVID's been a bit challenging because we haven't been utilizing that, but you know, that typical life type stuff, right? And
Yep.
You know, I'm able to, you know, run my tests and you know, come back for the family, check up on the kids, and
so when we talk about air quality testing, give me some examples. Well, I know, but give me some examples of what you actually get called to test, right? So are they households? Are they companies? Are they both? You know, what are they looking for?
What I actually like the most is, say, my typical customer is usually somebody that's purchased a new home. And even more typical, they're usually the customer that has purchased a new older home, and their husband's about to do some renovating, and the wife typically has decided to do some education on the internet and has found out that there's this thing called asbestos, and it causes mesothelioma, which is cancer of the lining of your lungs, which Google it on your own. It's not pretty, right? And it doesn't sound like it. Like there's a lot of ways you could go out, and that doesn't, you know, it's not good for you. So, you know, exposing yourself to these things is bad. And more often than not, sometimes I come in and people have done things, and you can see the guilt that they feel inside of themselves because they made a hasty choice before talking to somebody. Yeah, and that's actually one of the most difficult parts about it, because say I had a customer, I don't know, a month ago, and they actually were from a very, very, very expensive neighborhood in our city, like potentially the most expensive neighborhood in our city. And and he had done some work with a heating, like a duct that was coming up into their child's bedroom, and he'd frayed a whole bunch of this tape that was wrapped around the outside of the duct. And that was about 3 years ago. And now that they wanted to do some work, they decided to call and ask somebody what this was. And I came and told him, and then just you could see the color in the husband and wife's face just drop. And there's not much you can do about that at that time, but just, you know, I did the test. It was containing like 5%, which isn't the most, but any exposure is considered bad, right? So we don't want that to happen, but there's a huge miseducation with people out there with these things, because I know sometimes we live in a place where ignorance is bliss, and we go, well, my dad cut drywall open and my grandfather cut drywall open, and that's what I should be doing. And you go, well, my grandfather didn't have to drive a car with a seatbelt, and he didn't have to wear safety glasses at work, and he used to work in an oil plant and he could smoke a cigar while on site. Yeah. You know, like something.
You didn't have to tie off back in the day.
Yeah, but, that's right. You know, like, so, you know, like it really, I don't know, it's concerning, but it's one of those things where there's just not enough literature or backing by the government or any type of body to really notify the public about it. Like it's big in OH&S. Of course, we are always looking for this stuff, and everybody who works with it is fully aware of what it is, and they understand what type of safety precautions need to be taken with this. But the general public, they don't really understand it, and it's kind of disheartening.
Yeah, well, for sure. So when we're talking about like asbestos containing materials, a lot of people go, well, they stopped producing it in the 70s, or they'll stop, there was this time that we think that it was just over, but no one realizes that, hey, look, we still have all this stock. It was still like we have warehouses and warehouses of materials that are still used.
What essentially happened was the Canadian government, they stopped the production of asbestos materials at a certain point, and that's when everybody started to believe that we didn't have asbestos stuff here. I think it was like in 2001. I believe, not actual date, but I'm pretty close. I think in 2013 is when they decided to actually shut the mine down in Quebec, and we were all the time that they basically said that we're not producing asbestos materials in Canada. We were mining it still, shipping it off to other nations for them to use as a production material, and then we were turning around and buying it back.
Yep.
So up until 2013, it's safe to say there's potential. I've found it in newer homes. I've found it in newer commercial buildings and condo apartment complexes. It's there. And that's what I mean, that blind eye that people put up for themselves. They go, well, I heard this on a website, or I seen this or on the radio or something like that. And it's, that telephone game where somebody hears what's happening, that goes to the next person, and they pass it along and goes to the next person. And it's like, well, I heard that, asbestos is bad, but it's okay. We haven't done anything with asbestos in Canada since like 1950. You're like, whoa, dude, you're way off the mark on that one. Who told you that? And yeah.
I just pulled this up. So Canada just announced an asbestos ban with exemptions, December 30th, 2018. So it wasn't until 2018, which the ban, we could, making it illegal to import, manufacture, and sell or trade products made with this toxic material.
And that's what I mean. Like, I work in this industry. How confusing to the public, right?
Yeah.
There's no definitive straight answer that you can get. And if it's 2018 now, that's even more disconcerting, because that's 5 more years.
That's just, that now we're widening that up. It's like, well, we're still selling it, we're still producing it, we're still giving it to other people.
Yeah.
But now we're actually going to put this ban in effect, and so it's everywhere. So when people are, flooring, drywall, the insulation in your house, the ceiling tiles, pretty much anything, because at some point we thought asbestos was just this magic material, and for its properties, it was, just not to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's scary, right? Like, been in places where I've feared for myself at work, and even though the precautions have been taken, your FLHA is in place, you've done all the right, engineering and administrative stuff, and your PPE's in place, you still have that feeling sometimes where you're like, okay, I hope this follows the plan, right? And that, at that, like, working with this stuff, there's no underlying, like, in your face, this is dangerous, it doesn't set off the spidey sense when you're working with it, because it's so small particulates, right? And
you'll just find out about in 40 years.
Even like new things that people are coming up with too. I used to work a lot with aerogel when I was working in Fort McMurray as project manager. Our guys worked with this product called aerogel. I believe it was created for installation of space shuttles on reentry, and it pools, like, it absorbs water so quickly. When you see it in person, it looks like if it's raining and water falls onto a table, it absorbs all the water, and it looks like mercury, kind of. And then you start to think to yourself, look what could happen if that got into your lungs. And wearing a mask is so highly important for things of this nature. even silica right now is starting to become a very big concern for people in the industry. When I was working for the city, it was a very, very big concern. But people had worked there for a long time, and through evaluation with safety is how we venture forward. We of course, need to get better and refine and learn from our mistakes. And this is now why I think silica is starting to become a thing. You've been working in a lawnmower your whole life, or say you've been tunneling in sewers your whole life, or maybe a gravel truck driver who's been standing next to a gravel load that just when that gravel falls out of the truck, it creates a giant wave of dust if it's July and it hasn't rained for 2 weeks, right? Yep. And that over your lifetime is going to affect your respiratory system. So
and that's the things we look at, like occupational health and safety statistics for fatalities. Mm-hmm. And sure, our accidents and our vehicle accidents and workplace accidents are going down. Yep. As our population grows, or staying the same. So but our occupational disease fatalities are spiking every year, right? There's more and more every year, because this is stuff that we did for the last 50 years yep. that are now just starting to affect people over again, right? Yep. So now the problem with that is, okay, at least in a workplace or a setting that we're used to this stuff, yes, we are constantly educating people. We're educating employers. We're educating workers. But if you're not in that industry and you're just at your house, mm-hmm. That education is lost.
That's right.
And yep. you don't know any better.
Yep.
So let's leave it at this when it comes to air quality testing. Hey, if you're doing home renos, you should probably get some stuff tested. It's cost effective, and it's worth your effort and time to do this before you start your renos, just to make sure you're safe.
Yeah.
Right. And if it comes back negative, you're like, perfect, rip it down, mm-hmm. get the sledgehammer. If it's not, take some precautions.
And sometimes you find surprising things. Like I was at a home in Stony Plain a week ago, and this weird ceiling tile I'd never seen before. Don't know where the guy had bought the house from somebody else. He didn't know where it came from either. And we had no clue what it was. I tried Googling it, couldn't find anything that looked like it. And I was, at that point, you're usually like, there's
I made it myself.
There's gotta, but normally I'm like, with this thing, it has to have asbestos in it, because it's so, like, it was kind of like, looked like weird crown molding kind of texture, but in a drop ceiling kind of form. It was really, really weird.
Okay, so it's like,
it looked
fibrous,
like, yeah, it looked like a plaster drop ceiling tile. Like it was strange. So I took it in and had nothing in it. And I was actually pretty blown away, because usually that means that you can say there's probably asbestos in it. If it's weird, it probably has it in it, and if it's old, it probably has it in it. So
yeah, it's good. The dust you think's dust is probably not dust.
Yeah.
I look back at like my working career in refineries, plants, all this stuff, and you just like. I know in 30 years or 40 years, if something starts happening to my lungs, yes, we were trained. We had all these precautions in place. You had all this stuff, but it was still just starting to get enforced. Mm-hmm. Right. And you just think of the dumb things that you did, and you go, man, that's going to suck later,
Yeah.
So not worth it.
I used to work at a place where we used to tear down oil field valves, like right when I got out of high school. And we'd strip them apart, and the things that would come out of these valves was probably pretty freaking bad. But then we'd take them apart and wash them in Varsol with paintbrushes, just barehanded. I did that for 2 years. I'm very concerned for myself now for the future, because now we're finding Varsol is extremely cancerous. And like a genius, I smoked for a long time too, because it was a construction guy. And now live life as healthy as I can to try to, I don't know if you can prevent the damage, but just mitigate, because hopefully.
I remember even being a kid and painting, and my uncle had a fiberglass shop, right? So he used a lot of fiberglass. So acetone, man, it's really good for cleaning your hands, and it feels cool. And you're like, why does it feel cool? Oh, it's absorbing into my hands really quickly. That's great.
This dries really fast.
What is it?
So yeah, we do these things, and it's odd. I also was watching a documentary about people in Russia with asbestos, and they produce it there.
Yep.
Their livelihood is this place, and in their world, asbestos is fine. Like, don't tell me this is bad for me because my family makes this money doing this, and I just kind of, you see that and you're like, oh man, you know what people will do for money, or you know, kind of, it's, yeah, it's kind of, it's personally rewarding to be in this career because it's identified a specific thing within safety that I enjoy doing because it does help people with, you know, finding out what they got in their home, you know, finding out the drawback of it with the side effects. It's the disheartening part, and to know that more could have been done. That, you know, I wish the government would do a little bit more informative training or something of that nature, because I found out that up until the last election, provincial election, that there were government rebates in place to have asbestos removed from your building, and like now those rebates have been taken away as a commercial building. So me as an investor, I didn't even know this, and me as somebody that does asbestos testing, I didn't know this either.
Yep.
And I think if more people that were into property redevelopment knew about something like that, they would take advantage of it. Of course, this is going to increase the value of your building, right? Oh, I had, you know, all the asbestos was remediated and taken away, and we can say for sure that this building is clean and it's safe for people. That's big, you know.
Well, like most things with the government, you call it OH&S, any regulations, you know, it's all there. It's all available to people. You just have to find it, right? So, and that's the hard part. So reach out to a professional. And even if we can dig in for it, like whether, you know, we had a comment there talking about occupational hygienist, you know, great resource, your safety rep, a safety professional, air quality testing, all that stuff. Like, we know where to at least point and look, right?
Yes.
It can help. And you can start sifting through all that information. So, you know, there's a lot we talked about for air quality testing. We talked a little bit about marketing. We talked a little bit about investments. What's one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest successes you've had in your businesses? Right? Like, we can pick one, we can pick a bunch. You know, when you look at that,
there's only one challenge. It's always myself.
Okay.
I get in my own way, whether it be procrastinating or whether it be putting too much on my plate. It's a balancing act. If I do more of one or more of the other, I find myself unbalanced, and I can't accomplish what I want to accomplish. That is always a prevalent problem, and time.
Yeah. Well, we only got 24 hours in the day, right?
Right. So is time, right? And it's something I dwell on frequently because it is big. You know, like I said at the beginning, my calendar is huge. That's the balancer for a lot of these things that I do try to do, right? And even other things, I have other aspirations that I want, and there's only so much time. Like, another thing I'm looking at right now is trying to import cars from another country that are high-end exotic sports cars, and I put a lot of research and time into this, but I actually need like time to physically do more. I'm at this point, and it's having a passion to do what you do is important too. It's got to be something that you like. So every time that I try to do something, I go, this has to be something I enjoy. Because the reality for me with my career working for the man, I wanted it all. And when I got there, I didn't want it anymore. There were things about those jobs that I had that I just didn't want. And now for me in life, it's become more like, well, what do you like? What are you passionate about? And then when I'm passionate about something, I find myself actually putting in the time. At that time, it becomes not work. It's a hobby, right? And through some great tax planning and tax sheltering, you know, you find ways to make it work and benefit you as well, right? So,
well, you know, I look at that and I go, what am I really passionate about? You can't get paid to drink and sit on the couch, though. because you don't have time to do that. So when I get to do that, I'm like, man, this is great.
Well, there's some things in life you shouldn't get paid to do either. Like they'd be fat, you sit there, and that's what I mean. Like you'd be like, man, being the beer sampler at the beer factory probably is the greatest job in the world. And the guy at the beer factory is
like, an actual job.
Yeah, he's like, I'm an alcoholic, help me, right? And you're like, oh, after 35 years, poor blah blah blah, really looks bummed out, man. It's like, I hate beer. You're like, please don't ever say that. That's just so wrong. And and that's kind of what I'm getting at though. Like when I was working for corporate, Fortune 500 companies and stuff like that, it I couldn't. Yeah,
it wears on you.
It does. And
there's some politics, and there's culture issues, and there's a lot of external stress that comes with those types of positions.
Right.
Yeah. I remember coordinating outages, and you go, I'm 26. Why do I have gray chest hair?
Yeah.
Oh, because you don't stop working. You're on site 16 hours a day, and then you're still putting out fires from your camp, or and you go, oh, that's new.
I couldn't agree more. Like I had that recollection one day. I was like 32, and I was on site, and I was like, 32 years old. Somebody put me in charge of all of this. And like, yes, you work hard and you accomplish things, and sometimes you eat that humility a little bit too, right? Because you have your rough goes and stuff like that. Like the one thing that I wish I could know now, when I was young, is, man, like be more calculated with some of the tasks you take on, because if you take on too much, you're going to acquire a lot of stress, and too much stress, everybody's kind of got their breaking point with what they do. So managing and knowing what levels affect you and how you react to stress is big, right?
I agree. And that's not to take away from anyone who is in any of these jobs, because they're all important and they're all needed.
Yeah.
One of those things I would point on now is, the importance of mental wellness in the workplace, and actually finding those outlets so you're not carrying this stress. Like,
that's right.
For when I was in those positions, I know the stress, like the job was the job. It was fine. It was great. I met amazing people, but it's like, I just would bottle all that stuff in and go, what's my outlet? I'm just going to bury it down into a tumor.
It's funny because if you ask me in my career in construction, if I could pick one of the things to do that I did, I'd go back to operating a backhoe.
Oh, yeah?
It's simple. I got left by myself. Some days you have to jackhammer concrete all day. Nobody wants to be around you. You get to listen to music, and you got your orders in the morning, and you just go forward. And being ambitious, you can't just stay where you're at. You got to keep going forward, right? So you've climbed this mountain, and you look back down, and you're like,
next challenge.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like, when was I? Because that stress thing, you're taking on more than you maybe should sometimes, because you don't want to let your peers down, and you want to prove to everybody that you deserve to be at the next level. Because in my mind, I wanted to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That was my goal. Like I was going to night school, doing all the things, taking business and other stuff. And no one tells you when you're at the U of A that you may have to lay off 75 guys 3 weeks before Christmas.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the harshest part of it. And that's kind of where I know we segued away from what we were originally kind of talking about, but that was the hardest part. I know you asked me accomplishments in business.
Yeah. So we had the biggest challenge, right? Yeah. So we talked about that. Your biggest challenge is, well, I would say it's mindset and getting out of your own way.
Mental health,
I think with a lot of entrepreneurs are the same way, right? Because you go, okay, I know I am. It's like, hey, why haven't you achieved this? Oh, well, I stopped myself because I want to make sure things are perfect, or I want to do this, or right. So sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say quick too. I found like having outlets as well, as we were talking about this before we started here, you're talking about craving jujitsu.
Yeah.
It's just, having a hobby too, that has nothing to do with a lot of stuff. I actually like practicing yoga quite a bit. I find it good for my mind. It gives me some time to meditate and things like that. And that hour, 3 days a week, if that's what you can get, it's so stress relieving and mind freeing. And I think it does help combat a lot of this stuff where it gives you time to reground yourself. Because like I said, I am my biggest problem always. So.
Yep. I agree. You have to have some sort of constructive outlet, right? We joke about drinking, and it's not a joke. I thoroughly enjoy drinking, but it's not a constructive outlet, right? No. So trying to find one that's constructive for you is great. So what's a success in your businesses? One of your biggest ones that doesn't have to be sort of like it could be a dollar figure, but it could be, an accomplishment or something you figured out that, someone might be able to relate to.
I didn't grow up. It could be money. Yeah, no, I'll be honest. I didn't grow up in the best neighborhood, and growing up around, I grew up in Abbotsfield or near Abbotsfield, and growing up in an area like that, you see a lot of disadvantaged people and stuff like that, and I'd never been given anything.
Yeah.
Saying that real estate seminar, I had to really reevaluate myself because, like I mentioned earlier, the real estate thing for me has always just been part-time and something I just did because it was the thing to do. And in my mind, I believe that I could have better returns on certain types of real estate rather than keeping my money in bank. It's just how I look at it. Some people have commodities, some people do, other types of investments. This is my angle. It's where I do put my research, so I feel confident in my investing. My goal was to always become a millionaire. And
good goal.
For me, it's so humbling to say this because I just overlooked it and purchased different properties, acquired assets over a couple of years. And I was dealing with that 2-year deal that I was just talking about. And in the time period, I've basically over doubled my goal and didn't realize it happened. And now it's kind of funny because, like I said, you don't get to have a parade. Nobody does anything for you. And I'm actually sitting in the same spot that I was when I realized that this happened. I like having big wins though with my family. Sorry about that. I like having big wins with my family though. Supportive of my wife and her business, and her business is also growing quite substantially in the last 4 years, or 5 years, where she was doing her business out of her basement, and now she has a fully functioning firm with 10 staff and all the problems that come with that. But knowing that we're in it together and we kind of got each other's back, which is kind of a rare thing in entrepreneurialism. Typically people aren't really close with their spouse, I find, with these types of things. We're both members of Syndicate, right? And me and Danielle are the only team. We're not a team in businesses. We all represent our own businesses, because I feel like I'm talking like we're real estate agents or something like that. But
what bus benches.
Yeah, our business cards don't have our pictures on them. We're very supportive of each other, and when we have accomplishments in our businesses, having her there to support me and me to support her, I think that's a huge accomplishment, really. I've been married and divorced once in my life already, and though at the time I thought it was the right thing or whatever, being in a situation like I am with the type of support that I have, and in turn, we're syndicated, it's an invaluable feeling. And as an entrepreneur, to have somebody to go home and talk to you about the similar types of problems that you have, it helps, this relatability, I think. And that's an accomplishment that I think in the dark happens too, where we function by speaking to each other in bed and working out the next step or whatever we're going to do, right? When I'm going to go, put $250,000 down on a property because I want to invest in it, because once you have, home buyers get first time home buyer, right? Everybody else is putting 20% down. So when you get into larger properties, there's huge chunks of money that go into that, which is grossly scary. I guess it's a sick thrill, right? This is going to take months to finish, and I may not even get it in the end, and I'm going to give them all this, and I may
here's cash. I hope for something back.
But I have to talk with her about that. Of course, if we had a loss like that, it could be potentially catastrophic for our future goals. We have lofty goals, essentially, and that's another thing that I think for the multi-business idea, or how Mitch likes to put it, our Hydra. Lofty goals take, you have to have drive, and that support is there, and I know that the end goals will happen because of that. And that's my best accomplishment. It's kind of weird, but I've had all these plaques, and I have diplomas and certificates and all these things, education and superficial stuff, right? Like, you could be like, I was a project manager of a project that had a budget of $17.5 million, and I was in charge of that.
Yeah.
I don't get the warm fuzzies from that. It's interesting, right?
I look at my education and certificates and all that stuff, and a lot of them, and this is really bad, but a lot of them I just got out of spite. Mm-hmm. I was like, hey, if I get this, then you won't question me anymore. Right? So it gives like a validity to it. You're like, okay, this validates what I'm saying. But yeah, I never felt accomplished getting them.
No.
And I think the big thing from anything you read, like, sure, money, when you're young, money's a goal, right? Mm-hmm. You go, hey, I want to have millions of dollars and I want to do all this stuff. And but the minute you actually associate it not with the money, but with like a better purpose or a goal or a different aspect, that drive changes a little different. So now you're not obsessing about the money, you're obsessing about the next thing, or you're working through that process.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because now it's totally really not about it. But the more that it becomes not about it, the more, oh man, what I'm looking for, like, I don't, the more I get back, it's strange, because I have, like, say, a challenge that I've been given to give back, and I've taken a small group of entrepreneurs with our group syndicate, the people that are trying to break out on their own, and I'm spending some time doing advertising with them just to give this to them for free. Mm-hmm. I want nothing back from you guys. Actually, I find that motivating all in itself, because those people are the hungry ones of business. They're the ones that I want to surround myself. It's very easy to get stale when you're climbing the mountain, you're halfway to the top, and all the other people are kind of working their way up, and you could become complacent. And yep. When you give back and people are appreciative of it, like the group I'm working with, man, it's solid. And other times too, like, being charitable is so important. I in the past had worked with Nate with New Canadians Coming to Canada. It was a program that essentially taught people getting into the labor force, or like construction, for lack of a better term, education about what things are in the construction world. Like, you can come to Canada and you can take some ESL courses, and they're going to teach you like what a shoelace is and what a washing machine is, and all this stuff. But they had a program, and I don't know if it's still operating or not, that helped people get into construction. Whereas mm-hmm. like, this is Hammer, this is an FLHA. This is what construction culture is. And for me, that was a big thing, because of course, when you are on site and you're managing it, you see the divide between people and the type of things that drive wedges between groups. And a lot of it is like, unwillingness to understand each other's culture. And giving people these tools, I found was very beneficial, where they would have extremely more positive experiences, because you'd mentor them. You get a group of them as well, and there'd be 5 people over a period of time, and we'd have like meetings every 2 weeks, and you check-ins, right? How are you doing? You apply on jobs. Have any luck? Oh, you got a job? Great. How's that going for you? Are you having any issues with dealing with people or anything of that nature? And you could see the progression with these, new Canadians, and how happy they were because of that educational, I guess backboard they were getting to support them into getting into the workforce.
Well, like anything, if you're given the tools to be, if you're given the tools, to build some confidence, you're more competent in your task. Mm-hmm. People respect you more, and from a construction standpoint, it doesn't matter if you can put out work. The people will respect you.
The retention rate this program had was ridiculous, because it was like saying we're having communication problems, but the program was there to mend the fences for the communication issues to go, well, we understand this is a problem, so we're going to train them and teach them how to figure this out, right? Retention was high, and volunteer basis, and to see how many people you help, man, that was great. Still keep in contact with a few of them, and just it's so cool. I don't have words for it. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So we were all over the map today, and this is one of these things we could just talk for hours about pretty much anything. One takeaway, I guess, that we could leave people with, I don't know how we sum it up, is, find things that you love doing, right?
Absolutely.
Have a support network for everything you do, right? And don't make it about money. Yeah, I guess if you got to put food on your table, you're doing whatever you can to, make sure that you and your family is taken care of.
Yeah. Within reason, because my wife, the accountant, will get mad at me if we're not talking about budgeting in that area. Yeah. You got to pay attention to it. But like I said, charity and things come back to people that give. It's just proven fact, right? So,
well, and that's awesome. So let's leave it on that. Let's leave it on that thought, because the more you give back, and this is even like me trying to start this. This is. Sure, it's for me, but if I can highlight people and experts and everyone in someone else's field, give ourselves a voice.
It's great, right? So much stuff is basically propaganda to some extent, and these platforms give opportunity for discussion that may not be managed by global media conglomerates and things like that. So it's great, man. And everybody starts somewhere. So let's get this ball rolling.
Awesome. Okay, so we can give a little plug. How are people going to get a hold of you if they want to take air quality?
Contact at AQS Edmonton, and SOS Marketing, Facebook, Instagram, all the typical social media platforms. Yeah. The Syndicate is also a place that I've actually been dwelling in quite a bit lately. So if you're interested in coming check out our network that we go to, it's a good place with like-minded business people. So I'm endorsing that highly at the moment.
Perfect. Yeah. Good shout out. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Scott. I'm going to bounce you out. If anyone needs the contact information, I'll put it in the show notes later. And we'll chat soon, man. Thanks for joining me on episode 9.
Thank you for having me, man.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the comments. We did talk about absolutely everything, and we were all over the map today, but it was all great content. So if you want to reach out to Scott about anything from an air quality standpoint, there's so much to learn about air quality, asbestos, mold, all that important stuff that from our household standpoint, we out of sight, out of mind. If you want to learn marketing, reach out to him. I'm sure he'll even talk to you about investments or, setting up your own e-commerce store. Wealth of knowledge and a great background. Thank you for joining us. Like always, if you could please like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let's get everyone's voices heard. Have a great day.